It is getting hot up here in the fact check newsroom. Let me tell you what. Oh my gosh, we've been burning the midnight oil for. Oh, you want to say hi to? You want to say hi to the newsroom? Hold on. There they are. Hi guys. Good morning. Burning the midnight oil. I'm telling you, if you thought part one was good, it was good. It was a little slow, but good. But today, whoo, it gets hot in there. It gets hot. I'll be popping in and checking in on you because this is Mike, my intern. He borrowed his dad's suit for today. Looks good, Mike. Looking good. I'll be popping in to sort of clarify a couple things because it gets a little complicated. But we're ramping up for the good stuff, for the controversial stuff. So go give it a watch. I'll be right there. Okay. Bye. Go.
Kids want more of
Okay, so we're starting off
massive
about
problem is that
2 minutes where we left off yesterday, so you can sort of piece the two episodes together. But it's pretty self-explanatory from here. Enjoy.
We're at that time the wealthiest countries, the most cash-rich companies on earth. And they saw the writing on the wall. They saw that they were going to face litigation and regulatory headwinds. They saw that their customer base was shrinking. And they began to diversify. So they targeted the food companies. And by 1994, the two biggest food companies in the world were R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris, or tobacco companies. They took thousands of scientists that were involved in making tobacco more addictive and more attractive, particularly to kids. And they transferred those science to their food division. And those scientists went into the lab and began creating ingredients and identifying ingredients that make food addictive. So putting in loads of sugar, which is addictive, and sodium, and then developing these ingredients that mimic natural flavors. So they'll mimic a strawberry flavor, for example, and you're hungry for strawberries, and you can smell and taste this ingredient, but it has no nutrients in it. When you eat a strawberry, I duck. When you eat a strawberry, you're getting nutrients in that strawberry. When you eat that strawberry flavor, you're not getting any nutrients, and your body recognizes you're not getting nutrients, so it's craving more and more of it. So you have an impulse to eat without ever getting satiated. So you stuff yourself with food trying to get the nutrients, but they never come. And what you're getting in that food is making you sick.
And it's like an itch you can't scratch. And like this is a picture of European Fruit Loops and our Fruit Loops. Is the camera getting this? And ours are a lot brighter. And what's making them brighter are petrol-based dyes, right?
Right. And another thing they did was these scientists realized that your brain actually measures the number of times you chew to tell your stomach when it's full. It's one of the many metrics that your brain uses to tell when you're full. And so they began adding softeners to our food and make it so you don't have to chew so much. You can inhale a Twinkie. And your brain is telling your body, oh, you haven't eaten anything yet because you only chewed 2 or 3 times. So, these kind of chemicals are designed to make us insatiable, continually eating all day, never full, never satisfied, and getting less and less healthy. And then, of course, there's the chemical, the pesticides and these other kind of artifacts, the residues that are left in our food. And those are not, they're designed to kill plants and animals. And we're an animal, and our microbiome is filled with plants. So, we're literally eating poison.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was the first time in the video where it really started to get complicated and a little murky for us because our research was showing that when he mentions the pesticide residue, it was coming back with things like, oh, yeah, that's not true. There's no pesticide residue. Those things, pesticide is made for, weeds and insects. It doesn't hurt humans. And I had to go into, I use AI for part of my research and check those guardrails and say, we have to go deeper than just what the EPA says or what a pesticide organization or pesticide foundation's website says. We have to really dig deep into some of these scientific organizations, some of these universities like Harvard and Stanford, and what their findings are. And so once we did this, yes, we came up with some clearer answers for you. But this is where it starts to bifurcate a little bit because, as you know, RFK has some very controversial ideas. And get ready. He's about to unleash them on you. And I'll be here letting you know what I find out. Be right back.
Yeah, I wrote a book a long time ago called Ultimate Weight Solution, which was not a diet. It was talking about how we eat and interact with food. And I talked about high response cost foods and low response cost foods. And any food you could eat like a wood chipper, just where you didn't have to put anything into it, was exactly that. Your brain wasn't getting the message that you were actually eating. So you get a bean and cheese burrito, low response cost food. You never got satiated. You could just kind of inhale it, and it doesn't give your brain the message. And
the same is true of sugar. If you have granulated sugar, human beings are designed to eat sugar because when the apples bloomed or the oranges bloomed during certain parts of the year, you had a craving and you would eat them for a short period of time. Your body's always craving them because there's a lot of good stuff in that fruit. There's fiber and there's vitamins, etc. If you're eating granulated sugar, your body is craving it, but your stomach and your mind are telling your body, oh, you haven't really eaten anything because you haven't had to chew the apple, you haven't had to, there's no effort in it. And so we can eat unlimited amounts. Of course, sugar is like crack. It's poison, and it feeds tumors. It destroys your brain. It destroys all of your organs. And we are programmed to eat it every minute of the day, from advertising to it's in everything that we eat.
Yeah, I looked this up. In 1800, the average person had 18 pounds of sugar a year. In 1900, 90 pounds of sugar a year. In 2009, 180 pounds of sugar a year. So, I mean, that's a half a pound a day. So we're eating a lot of sugar these days that we weren't eating back then. And obesity wasn't a big problem back then.
It's not only obesity, but it's diabetes. When I was a kid, the typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes during his entire career, 40 or 50-year career, juvenile diabetes. Today, 38% of teens are pre-diabetic or diabetic. And we don't have to ask why. We're loading our kids with sugar. 20 years ago, there was virtually no diabetes in China. Today, over 50% of the adult population is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And it's because they built 20,000 fast food joints in China. And they are now suffering the consequences.
Yeah. Now, the things that we're talking about, these are not things that are challenging to follow, right? I mean, this makes common sense. So why do you think people are so threatened by what you're doing? It can't be just the confusion about vaccination, because you don't have to go very far to find legacy media that either won't talk to you or labels you as some kind of conspiracy crazy nutball. Why do you think people are so threatened by the message that you are delivering? Because you're saying this isn't you coming up with what you're going to do and what you think should be done. You have a solid commitment to gold standard science, empirical science that's not corporate captured, that is truly empirical, replicable science with good methodology, good sample sizes. And what you're talking about here is irrefutable. These are facts. Why do you think people are so threatened by your message?
Well, I don't think it's a mystery. The industries that profit from these products are very powerful industries. They're industries that not only control Congress, the pharmaceutical industry has, I think, 2 or 3 lobbyists for every member of Congress and the Senate. And the processed food industry is also very, very powerful. And they're both huge advertisers on the media. Roger Ailes, who is the founder of Fox News, and I had this strange relationship with Roger Ailes because when I was 19 years old, I spent 3 months in a tent where politically antithetical. He was a very smart guy, very funny, very, very funny.
I knew Roger well.
Make Fox News host, the show hosts like Sean Hannity and Neil Cavuto and Bill O'Reilly and all the others put me on to talk about the environment, even though he didn't agree with anything I was saying. And then I went to him in 2014 because we had just done a documentary film on aerosol and vaccines. And he had a family member who'd been affected. And he said, there's nothing I'd rather do. I believe everything in this film. There's nothing I'd rather do than put this on. If any of my hosts allowed you on to talk about this issue, I would have to fire them. And if I didn't fire them, I would hear from Rupert, meaning Rupert Murdoch, within 10 minutes. And the reason for that, he said, is 75% of his advertising revenues on the evening news shows were coming from pharmaceutical companies. He told me at that time, I don't know if this is still true, but that typically on an evening news show, there's 22 advertisements. And 17 of those are pharmaceutical ads. The pharmaceutical companies really like evening news because only old people watch the news. On TV, I have a 28-year-old kid, and I said, have you ever seen an evening news show? And he said, no. He's very well informed, but he gets it from other sources. And so they're advertising to people who are the biggest buyers, purchasers of pharmaceutical products, but they're using that leverage to get control, not only to advertise the products, but to get control of content. So, Anderson Cooper gets a salary of something like $20 million a year, but probably 75% of that is coming indirectly through pharmaceutical companies. So that's who his boss is, and that's why he's reporting to him. That's why during COVID you saw, all of these news channels completely on board, shaming people who didn't go along with the government orthodoxies and drumming up fear about COVID, printing the deaths on the chyrons every day and the number of cases, et cetera. And, there was, and fortifying an orthodoxy that just so happens to create huge profits for their advertisers. The food companies are the other big advertisers, so the cereal brands, et cetera. So they have tremendous power over the media, and that's one of the reasons I think that I get such blowback.
Okay. So obviously, the man has an issue with Anderson Cooper. I don't know if you heard it. I could kind of hear it on the tape. The RFK starting to rant about Anderson Cooper's salary, and Dr. Phil kind of goes, kind of like, we don't want to drag Anderson into this. But I think the point that RFK is trying to make is that, and we're seeing it a lot these days, that, you know, the news agenda seems to be more and more pushed by deep pockets, political figures, political affiliations, so on and so forth. So I can see where he is making that point. And even though the facts aren't substantial as far as it being proven, I think we all know that there's definitely the seedy underbelly of the media.
Has it been worse than you expected since you have taken over? Has the pushback, the character assassination, the twisting of words, the taking out of context, has all that been worse than you thought, or has it been about what you expected?
I mean, I'm pretty used to it because I've been doing it for 20 years. And it was always, you know, I've been censored for 20 years. So, you know, and during COVID, I was surprised because they removed me from Instagram. And they said it was because I was passing misinformation.
Okay, the man is very protective of his Instagram. This is where we're gonna see some stuff really start to take shape. So I'm just popping in to say, stay with me, okay?
But they could not, when I challenged Instagram on it, they could not point to one post that I'd ever made that had any misinformation in it. I was always very careful about what I posted because I know, you know, I was used to being challenged, so I didn't want to put something up there that was wrong. So every fact that I ever put on Instagram was cited and sourced to either government databases or peer-reviewed publications. And I had a fact-checking operation like I think no other in America. We had 350 MD physicians and PhD scientists on our advisory board, including the Nobel laureate Luc Montagnier, who was the guy who got the Nobel Prize for discovering the HIV virus. And those people would not have stayed with me for a second if I was posting irresponsibly. So, you know, in fact, when we got, you know, I sued them on this. I sued the Biden administration, and I won that lawsuit. And what we found through discovery was that 37 hours after President Biden took the oath of office, swearing to uphold the Constitution, he appointed a group in the White House to censor me and other people. But I was the first one censored, and and we now have the emails between him and this group and Mark Zuckerberg and other people at Twitter, et cetera, which Elon, you know, made public, and thank God for him. And I don't think we'd have free speech in this country if it wasn't for Elon Musk, because he opened up Twitter and he allowed people to see what was actually happening. Yeah. And by the way, against the advice of all of his attorneys, he turned all these documents over to a bunch of journalists and said, do what you want with them. Yeah. That's unheard of. So, and you know, he lost billions of dollars. He gained it back, and now he's lost it again. But you know, so I was used to it. Instagram immediately canceled me, took me off. I lost 1 million followers. And for a year, they would not even explain it. And ultimately, we were able to talk to them. And and when President Trump came in, they put me back up again. Yeah, it's about time. All right, we're going to take a quick break. But don't go far, because tonight's town hall meeting.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. He threw in a lot of factual statements in a very compact amount of time. So we'll start with the Instagram thing. So, of course, there's no official word, any statement from Instagram during that time, or now for that matter, on when, how, why, what the posts were that got him banned or kicked off. But in our research, we did find some reports on what those were, and I guess some people have archived them or whatever. And yes, they are extremely controversial. And not only are they still controversial now, but at the time when it was just so full of chaos, it was just a horrible fever dream at this point. I could see where more people would have been sort of in an uproar about it. I could see where platforms were maybe trying to not create chaos or hysteria. And I'm jumping forward a little bit, but yes, they were also warned or asked or told by the Biden administration to curb that kind of talk or behavior, hence the disagreement about the First Amendment right. Okay. So you also have Kennedy making these statements on his social media that he says are backed by research, papers, scientists, boards, right? He's not wrong. But some of these researchers and scientists that he had on his board were also considered extremely controversial and they were sort of discredited from their careers. Now, take from that what you want. I mean, I even sometimes go, well, maybe they do try to quiet the people who are discovering things that they shouldn't be discovering. But that just complicates an already very complicated issue. So the fact was, he was saying things that were controversial. Instagram and or social media didn't like it. They booted him off. Now, here comes the lawsuit. And this is where it gets really, really murky because he claims that he sued the Biden administration and won. But that's not altogether true. He won an injunction that allowed him to continue to post on social media without fear of being removed. So it was a stay on the course to the bigger lawsuit. Stay with me on this one. There were two lawsuits at the same time. One from Kennedy and his Children's Health Network. And the other one that he was loosely involved in was one that was the state of Missouri and the state of Louisiana against the Biden administration. And they were both basically saying the same thing. So what happened was he won the injunction from one lawsuit with the sort of contingency that the other one would also go through to the Supreme Court, if I'm reading the research right. And then the Supreme Court shot down one of them, saying that there just wasn't enough evidence and yada, yada, yada. So it's, again, all very murky, all very complicated. I think Kennedy still has the lawsuit against the Biden administration, but the problem is this: Biden's gone. So now he'd be suing the administration of Trump, which is also the administration that he works for. So complicated. So complicated. So apparently I'm supposed to say something like and subscribe and comment. You know what you could do though? You could share this. You could forward it to somebody who you think might like it. Your mom, your sister, your grandma, your dad, your boss, your crazy tinfoil hat wearing cousin. Just kidding. But that'd be really great. Thank you.
Whether to get vaccinated in general. At the same time, we have a measles outbreak. Tell us what we need to know about the measles outbreak that's going on right now. Is this any more than we've had in previous years? Is it about the same? Where are we?
This is the second biggest outbreak since 2000. So the biggest outbreak, which is about 1,200 cases, was in 2019. We have now, I think of this morning, about 847 cases in our country. We have 3 deaths. We've had, I think, a total of 4 deaths from measles since 2020, or since 2000, sorry. I mean, I would say that we're doing well. If you look at Canada, they have roughly the same number of measles cases, but they have 1/8 of our population. Europe has 10 times the amount of measles cases that we have. They've got about 7,000. Last year, Europe had an outbreak of 127,000, 37 deaths. One of the, the MMR vaccine, the measles vaccine, pretty much for a time ended measles cases. But the vaccine wanes, and also a lot of people don't get vaccinated. And the outbreaks are mainly taking place in unvaccinated communities, but there's also some vaccinated people that get sick. The vaccine wanes about a little over 4% per year. Mm-hmm. That means a lot of older people are walking around with very little protection, if any protection. And there's the most famous infectious disease, the number one infectious disease expert in the world in 1963 when they put in this vaccine was Sir Graham Nelson. Is that me or you?
Not me.
At RFK. So forgetful leaving his phone on. Okay, guys. That's where we're going to end it for today. The next installment, part 3, will be out in 24 hours. But it gets wild. We have not even touched on the autism thing yet, the vaccines, the root cause. It's a cliffhanger. It's a cliffhanger, I tell you. But in the meantime, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and peace out. Word to your mother.